If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I'm Gabby Aka, and thank you for joining us to commemorate one of our country's most inspiring civil rights leaders. The Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts and the Reginald F. Lewis Museum have planned a special weekend for us here in Baltimore. Over the past few days, we've heard from artists and activists whose work is rooted in the fight for justice and driven by the impact of Dr. King. Today we honor legacy. We honor it for Dr. King and for his legacy's impact on voices of change that carry his message today. And for us here in Baltimore, we honor the legacy of our annual MLK Parade, a 20-year tradition that has been so special to our community. Dr. King's vision called for a more diverse and equitable America, and while the power of his voice and actions brought momentous change to our country, it is clear that there is still so much work to be done today. But the good news is this: Dr. King's legacy lives on in the voices of leaders, change makers, artists, and activists now. We've seen this unfold so clearly this year in the gatherings of peaceful protests across our country, in the public art that unfolds on city streets and buildings with Black Lives Matter in bold letters and loving portraits of those we've lost to racial violence, and in the way that citizens step up to lead their communities. His legacy lives on. Today, I'm joined by a group of incredible individuals who represent leadership, activism, and change. These community leaders, artists, and creatives live out the legacy of Dr. King in their work and lives every day, and they're here to share stories, performances, and special messages that show us the impact of Dr. King's legacy and inspire all of us to take part in the work that still needs to be done. Along the way, we'll also relive some of the most memorable parade performances and hear from longtime parade participants as we celebrate this beloved Baltimore tradition. In the words of Dr. King, we have to keep moving forward. We hope that this weekend of art and activism inspires you, motivates you, and pushes all of us to be part of the work of moving forward toward justice. That is how we continue to honor Dr. King's legacy.
Baltimore. For over 20 years, we have celebrated the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with an annual parade. But we all know we are not able to celebrate in the ways that we have in previous years. In lieu of our annual parade, the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts has partnered with the Reginald F. Lewis Museum for the Art of Activism, the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a special weekend of programming that honors Dr. King through the voices of Baltimore's artists and activists who carry out his legacy each day in their own work. In the spirit of community, today's program brings together voices of change from across the city to share what the legacy of Dr. King means to them. From poets and performers to community leaders and residents, on this MLK weekend, we come together to celebrate Baltimore's rich history of art, culture, and activism that helped shape the city into what it is today. I am proud that despite these unusual times, BOPA and the Reginald F. Lewis Museum have put together this program to honor Dr. King's tremendous legacy and advocacy for racial equality, justice, and peace. As we settle into this new year, I encourage us all to continue to engage in the work of keeping the legacy of Dr. King alive throughout 2021 and in the years to come. Thank you.
Earlier this year, the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts released a call for nominations for an honorary grand marshal to highlight Baltimore's most impactful leaders and commemorate the annual parade. The community has spoken, and today we are thrilled to congratulate and celebrate Val Jenkins, the founder of Hug Don't Shoot, as this year's honorary grand marshal.
Hello, everyone. My name is Val Jenkins, and I am the founder of Hug Don't Shoot. My organization is the first nonprofit to win the Hometown Hero Award from the Baltimore Ravens. And now I am proud to be the 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Honorary Grand Marshal. Hug Don't Shoot started in 2017. I was on the beach of Cancun, Mexico, when I looked on Facebook and saw that someone in Baltimore was murdered. I made a simple statement online that we need to start hugging and stop shooting. From there, the community came together and we decided to make August the 5th, 2017, our first event. We met at the Reptile House at Drew Hill Park and walked down to North and Pennsylvania Avenue, and we hugged everyone we came in contact with. The next day, the governor's office called us. The following day, the mayor's office called. But on the third day, we received a call from someone whose best friend's teen has been murdered. They asked if we could come to hug their family, and so I did. Since then, Hug Don't Shoot has participated in more than 1,600 programs and events in the 3-year time span. We attended funerals, senior buildings, all holidays, visit homeless, and much, much more. It is Dr. King's dream that has inspired me to create my own dream of peace. I have a testimony, and I too have a dream. It is with great honor that I give accolades of Dr. King's dream of peace and honor it through Hug Don't Shoot mission to bring some sense of peace. Because of Dr. King's dream, I can proudly say I am the founder of a nonprofit called Hug Don't Shoot, increasing peace. I have a board of Black and white members working towards a common goal of peace. Baltimore City has a Black commissioner who did his first radio interview in Baltimore on my radio show. Yup, that's right. I even had a radio show. Dr. King said, it is a hard, tedious job to get people to see exactly what you're doing to bring peace, because people don't always see the vision that can win. My organization and I are living proof of Dr. King's dream. As Dr. King stated, we need organizations to mobilize and come together to stop racism and violence. Change is inevitable when it hits home. It's up to us, no matter your race, age, or religion, to truly wipe your eyes and see the vision Martin Luther King had to stop racial equality and stop the violence. Again, my name is Val Jenkins. I not only ask for you to give your neighbors a virtual hug, but sometimes give yourself a hug. Just as Dr. King and I had a dream, let's come together to end the madness and make the dream a reality. Thank you.
All right, y'all, this is what y'all been waiting for. Some of these marching bands to get you moving, all right? Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School Marching Band, magnificent marching band, Poets Marching Band, from Paul Lawrence Dunbar Senior High School, returned for their 4th year in a row. Y'all give it up for Dunbar, y'all. And our commissioner, how you doing, sir? All right. President of our city council on stage right now. Jack Young.
The arts, in all of its many forms, are vehicles for inspiring change, and our next guest today does just that through her poetry. Dr. Khadija Ali Coleman represents Zora's Den, an online community for Black women writers, and today she shares with us her poem, The Summoning of Black Joy.
Reclaim your thunder and your rage from the sunken swamp of your insecurities where your true self knows no sunset. Be informed that your joy cannot emerge into a land that bears the fruit of your complicit silence, that kills your spirit with each hollow nod each time you agree to a world that is committed to dismantling you whole, exiling joy from your vastness. Today, unshoulder the foreign weight that you have held without compensation, slipping your toes into the sands of satisfaction and self-understanding. Commit yourself to yourself, pledging allegiance to your right to be, to become, to enjoy, to discern, to discover, to recover, to ignite, to excite, to unleash, to design, and to find all that makes you marvel at this world that you have fantastically had a hand in creating. Reclaim your thunder and your rage. Defy all of the agents who seek to mute the lofty grace of your blossoming, strip them of their permissions to manhandle your sweetness and discard your dignity. Keep close the password to further entry from the unworthy. Glory in your unabashed shining, for you are light eternal, beckoning the promise of bliss.
Our next guests are a very special part of Baltimore's parade tradition. The Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity is the first Black intercollegiate Greek-lettered fraternity. 7 men, known as the Seven Jewels, founded it on December 4th, 1906 at Cornell University. The Alphas have proudly participated in the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Parade every year to honor Dr. King, a member of their fraternity. They're here with us today to share a very special message.
Each year, Alphas from Baltimore and beyond descend upon the intersections of Utah and Martin Luther King Boulevard to honor the powerful legacy of Brother Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King's work and legacy is an epitomizing representation of the aims of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It is for this reason that year after year, we hold high the light of Alpha and celebrate the nonviolent activism of our dearly departed brother in pomp and circumstance during the annual MLK Parade.
Dr. King's philosophy of nonviolent activism fueled the civil rights movement and incited hope to African Americans who had dreams of fair and equitable futures for their children. The men of Alpha Phi Alpha consistently look toward the work of brothers such as Dr. King in order to remain centered in our mission, aims, and objectives.
Alpha Phi Alpha seeks to aid downtrodden humanity in its efforts to achieve higher social, economic, and intellectual status. To this end, we have committed ourselves to doubling down on our mission, even amidst the pandemic of COVID-19 and the pandemic of racism. In the words of Brother Dr. King, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? When we consistently bear that question in mind, for the sake of the shoulders upon which we stand, we will always be first of all, servants of all, and transcend all.
And before us, we have Carver Vocational Technical High School Marching Band. The Carver Marching Band brings high energy and enthusiasm. It features the cheerleading squad, majorettes, and Carver's dance team. One time, let's welcome Carver High School! Show us what you got, Carver. Let's go! Yes! Let's work! Let's go! Come on, here we go! Go, Carver! got Carver. We know you got a lot. Let's go.
Every generation of obsidian skin lives the same recurring dream. The one where a monarch's crown is shattered beneath America's boot heel. The one where the dreamers become martyrs, and the nightmare bears its century-old fangs. In the nightmare, blackness is a phoenix. When it dies, it doesn't take long for the fire to come. America turns its nose up at the grief in the streets. Says the phoenix should have dressed its grief up in a suit and tie, should have made its anger more approachable to keep from setting ablaze. Forgets the gasoline it doused on those who tried peace, and only in those moments does it request an audience with Martin Luther King. Not to listen to the word, but just to cement the myth of him that it molded out of the ash that settled over the country 5 decades ago. And every time this dream rewinds in America's mind, the warning he gave before his crown was shattered, that the riot is the voice of the unheard, ironically falls on deaf ears. That nightmare seemed to replay with the same script this summer, when the phoenix met its end, caught between a knee and an unforgiving sidewalk. But when the smoke clears and the phoenix rises again, blackness decides that this death by fire will be the last, that immortality isn't worth 9 dimes if it means the phoenix dies over and over and over again to teach this country a lesson it will never learn, so it lets go of the rage it holds within its wings. It breathes, not to feed the flame, but just for breathing's sake. It loves, knowing that love alone can't fix the evil that others hold within their hearts, but hoping, nonetheless.
Hi, my name is Pastor Corey Barnes, and I serve as the president of We Our Us. Participating in the Martin Luther King Parade is a monumental and historical pursuit for our organization. Martin Luther King Parade marks the day We Our Us put out the call for 1,000 men to stand up and be a part of the MLK Parade. Amazingly, over 1,000 men stepped up to heed the call and take up the cause and walk down Martin Luther King Boulevard to show unity, love, compassion for their fellow brothers and sisters. It was a lightning rod moment where hundreds of men from different walks of life were drawn together from different backgrounds, different faiths, and even different races to walk as one in unity in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King fought for justice, changing the trajectory of history and driving a moment that still continues to fight. We are still standing against the darkness of routine, economic, criminal, and racial injustice in our city and around the world. Our philosophy is to protect, connect, mediate, and share the message. We go out into the community where the violence is taking place and to do those four things through love, compassion, and faith. We believe that when we engage with a positive and constructive message, it helps to remove negative and destructive behavior. I heard the sacred book say, light and dark can't take up the same space. Dr. King was a connector, a protector, a mediator, and a messenger. The We, Our, Us movement adopts Dr. King's method of nonviolence, but we fully believe we must be proactively reach out where people are hurting, suffering, and experiencing pain. As long as children are dying on our streets, we're going to show up. We have a chant that when we walk the street that if you're fed up, then show up. We cannot stop engaging until violence and injustice is no longer threatening the lives of our children. We are fed up and we are going to show up. Even as we are inundated with the pandemic, we see racial disparity throughout our healthcare, education, and economic systems. The fight for justice must go on, and We, Our, Us movement will continue to fight. Since the pandemic exploded, it has changed the way we engage the community. We used to blanket the community 3 days a week with over 300 men. However, as the pandemic rages, our engaging the community twice a week as we rally a little under 100 men. But we still feel the need to engage. Sadly, this is the 6th year our city will record over 300 murders. So it is imperative that we do not stop engaging our community that is overwhelmed with a culture of violence. Additionally, we must continue to bring resources to those who are in need as we look at the future. We have been able to connect over 600 people with jobs, place 100 people in rehab, and serve 1.5 million pounds of food to the hungry. However, moving forward, it is essential that we persuade each person we come in contact with to continue to walk with us through life as long as our people are in need. In this way, we can coach the community in a culture of life and stability, as well as protect, connect, and share the message and mediate. Listen, if we're going to do it, it's going to be done with We, Our, Us. Thank you.
Greetings. I am Dr. Edwin Green Jr., Director of Programs and Education for the Greater Baltimore Urban League. Since 1924, GBUL has been a leader in the fight to help underserved Marylanders thrive through the pillars of equal opportunity in employment, education, healthcare, housing, and legislative advocacy. You can't talk about uplifting communities, especially not Black communities, without recognizing the myriad contributions of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is criminal that traditional education has relegated Dr. King to just a speech. He was so much more than that. He indeed was the embodiment of the 5 pillars I just mentioned. Participating in the MLK Day Parade has been significant for GBUL for many reasons. We use this as a youth development activity where we've hosted talkbacks and other informative sessions for our community of scholars to learn about Dr. King's work and the ways in which it is still relevant and informing what we do today. The parade has been an opportunity for us to reinvigorate our resolve to do all that we humanly can to support families and communities in need. Of the many truths that Dr. King told us includes the notion that the institution of capitalism was built on the exploitation and suffering of Black slaves and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both Black and white, both here and abroad. Our intentionality around economic self-reliance is really centered on an understanding of the root cause of much of the suffering that communities face. It is this understanding that helps us focus our nonviolent activism as we work to eradicate the barriers that prevent people from reaching their full God-given potential. We talk a lot about COVID and the horrific outcomes that have happened as a result of failed policies to address it, but it must be stated that COVID, while horrific, has only highlighted the kinds of inefficiencies and inequities that have existed long before there ever was a COVID. This is what we do at GBUL. We make certain that the powers that be are examining issues from an equitable and culturally sound perspective, and we support communities in finding their voice. Moving forward, we'll continue to be the anchor that the community views as a trusted source, regardless of the pandemic that faces us. Thank you.
All right, next up, the Baltimore All-Stars Marching Band Unit is the trend-setting, award-winning, creative marching unit. With over 75 members, the Baltimore All-Stars entertain the communities of Baltimore and travel as far as New Orleans, Minnesota, Connecticut, Atlanta, and New York City, just to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, show your love for the Baltimore All-Stars Marching Unit!
All right, little ones, let's get it. Let's get it.
Those little mamas are moving.
Y'all know they keep up like that. Little girls working. Drumline. Drumline. Oh, hell yeah, y'all got right in the middle of two marching bands, huh? Y'all love that, don't y'all? How you love that? Y'all check out the symbol, huh? Hey, man, that boy place when you see the symbol, huh? Hands gonna be ringing. All right. Hey, symbol guy, make sure you tie your shoe when they finish, so you don't fall down, all right?
If freedom for Black lives is radical, then let it be so. Realistic, sustainable, strategic, bold. Let it be collaborative, research proven and backed. Let it be America reimagined through a modern-day Civil Rights Act. Never before articulated into federal legislation, let it be a solid foundation for Black, brown, and indigenous self-determination. Because only once invisible chains are shattered can we say with a clear conscience that all lives matter. Repairing harm to our communities and reimagining our fate is the only way to make America great for the first time. Imagine bonds for neighborhoods historically redlined and police held accountable when they commit crimes, full classrooms with each student engaged, inclusive, historically accurate curriculum reflected on every page. Debt forgiveness for Black farmers, prep for climate change, zero emission energy and clean water, restoration of green spaces. This is our armor, so we don't have to raise our children as martyrs, so our communities can have grandparents, mothers, and fathers, so we can start on level ground and dream even larger. And these freedoms won't come overnight. But we can safeguard our future generations if it's done right. Call local and national representatives to the table. Job protection for the non-binary, trans, queer, straight, and disabled. In solidarity, we rise because our freedoms are tied. Unity without conformity, our goals so deeply aligned. Together is the only way forward, with a true American dream to strive for, to live the life we long for and the land we built and bled for. So call us radical because we believe that every human deserves the right to live free and breathe.
For our final guest tonight, I am thrilled to introduce Erica Bridgeford, a community leader and activist and the vision behind Baltimore Ceasefire.
Participating in the MLK Parade has been a wonderful way to build community between Baltimoreans who otherwise may not have engaged with each other. Peacemakers, people impacted by violence, and activists have all joined us in the parade, and it's been a beautiful experience for everyone. Baltimore Ceasefire 365 operates through values such as inclusion, compassion, and self-determination. This means that we intentionally avoid shaming or blaming others, and instead we have compassion for how people are impacted by root causes of violence. The movement gives everyone in Baltimore an opportunity to do any small or big thing they want to do to promote peace and or celebrate life. These values inspire hope and action in Baltimoreans in the face of heartbreaking violence. The pandemic exacerbated root causes of violence and in some ways escalated already violent situations. But more people have gotten involved in our work, more people have donated to our work, and more people are asking how they can get involved. While our trainings have had to move to virtual platforms, our presence in neighborhoods which experience murder has remained in person, observing COVID-19 precautions. In the future, we expect that Ceasefire Peace Challenge weekends will be recognized as holidays in Baltimore, and many more organizations and groups will be official ceasefire communities. Thank you so much for having me. To find out more about how you can get involved, go to baltimoreceasefire.com or follow us on Facebook or Instagram, both at Baltimore Ceasefire. Thank you.
Baltimore is full of inspiring change makers. Our communities are stronger because of their work and commitment, and I hope that our speakers today have left you feeling motivated to learn from and join in the work that pushes all of us to a more equitable and just society. Our community has come together for 20 years to celebrate and honor Dr. King. Now, we must move forward, led by the examples set by the leaders in our community, those who've spoken today, and the countless others who live Dr. King's legacy each day through their work here in Baltimore and across the country. From the Baltimore Office of Promotion and the Arts and the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, we thank you for joining us today to honor Dr. King, to uplift the voices of our community leaders, and to commemorate a special Baltimore tradition. Let's all keep moving forward together. Thank you, everyone.